How do I get my kid to practice? How do I get them to play an instrument like those kids on YouTube? Well, today I'm going to tell you how. Hi guys, this is Joel Kennedy, and today I'm talking about how to raise a child to be a successful student musician. Now, some of you may know a little bit about me already, but I am a violist, and I grew up as a student musician, then I went to college, and then I became a professional player, and I taught for many years, and now I'm in a position where I'm the parent of 2 student musicians. So I have a somewhat unique position in that I've seen every aspect there is of music education. And so I have developed a basic philosophy of how to successfully raise children to be musicians, and I want to pass that philosophy on to you guys today. Now, before I talk about my basic philosophy, I just want to mention 2 things. So number 1, every kid is different. So what works really well with my kids may not work as well with your kids. And I have 2 kids and they're both polar opposites. So I totally understand it. I get that. However, being a parent and a teacher for many years, I've seen a lot of consistent patterns with parents who have successfully raised children to be musicians who have achieved a very high level of musicianship. Number 2 is that talent is highly overrated. Talent plays a very small role in the ability of your child to be successful as a musician. I was a teacher for many years. I've seen kids from all walks of life, all different IQs, all different kinds of backgrounds. They can all be successful musicians who achieve a high level of ability. It really all comes down to consistent, proper practice. That really is, and support at home. There's a great book that I read not too long ago called Talent is Highly Overrated, and it was written by Jeff Mullen, I believe. It's available on Amazon. I'll put a link below in the description. I highly recommend you read this book. But this book basically provides a lot of scientific, factual information on a lot of very successful people, why they were successful, and it shows definitively that really talent or the innate ability that a person may have to learn a particular skill plays a very small part in their overall long-term ability to be successful at a particular skill. So now on to my basic philosophy of how to raise kids to be successful musicians. Now I keep on mentioning the word success. Well, success for me may be defined differently than it is for you, but I'll tell you how I define success. I define success with 3 goals. Number 1, I wanted to make sure that I raised kids who developed a deep appreciation for classical music or the arts in general, not only for their young adult years, but also into their future. In other words, I wanted to give them the gift of music, something that nobody can take away from them. Number 2, I wanted my kids to develop a high enough skill level with their particular instrument so they would have as many options available to them as possible. In other words, when they graduate from school, from high school, I wanted them to be able to pursue whatever avenue they wanted to, what they wanted to. Not what I wanted to, but what they wanted to. So, do they want to be professional musicians? Do they not? Do they want to go to a high-level conservatory? Maybe they just want to go to university. Well, maybe they just want to play amateur in an amateur group just for their own enjoyment. Or maybe they want to use their instrument as a tool for getting scholarship at a college, or maybe they want to use it as a tool to be able to be accepted into a university that they may not have otherwise been accepted to, but the instrument enabled them to have that door open for them. Whatever it is at their goal, I just wanted them to have as many options available to them so they could do whatever they wanted to do. Goal number 3 was to make sure that I didn't achieve the exact opposite of goal 1 and goal 2. I didn't want to poison them against their instrument or classical music or the arts in general, and perhaps most importantly, I didn't want to poison my relationship with my kids long term. So how do you accomplish these goals? Well, I think it can be broken down into 2 primary ways. Number 1 is you want to make sure you find a good teacher. I define a good teacher as somebody who is positive and also adheres to high standards. Now, this is easier said than done. In fact, I would say the majority of string instrument teachers out there in particular probably shouldn't be stringed instrument teachers, or at least you shouldn't be giving them your money or your time. So how do you find a good stringed instrument teacher? Well, I did a video on this a few months ago. I think it's a pretty good video, and I give you a nice breakdown. I put the link below in the description so you can check out the video. I highly recommend you check out the video. But the basic gist of the video is that you want to look at the track record of the teacher. How successful are their students? That's where the rubber meets the road. And you want to look at their professional background. Were other people willing to pay them for how they were able to play their instrument? Number two is you want to make sure that learning the instrument is as positive as possible. Now, negative reinforcement does work a lot of the time. In fact, I've seen it work many times. Unfortunately, it only works temporarily. So a lot of parents will use kind of negative coercion, guilt, punishment to try to get their kids to practice. But what happens is that once the kids are at a point where they can rebel, they usually do rebel. And not only will they rebel against the instrument and classical music or the arts in general, they'll rebel against the parents. So now the instrument kind of signifies all these negative things, and so they don't want anything to do with the instrument, and they may not want anything to do with you either. So you want to make sure that you stay away from goal number 3. So how do you keep learning an instrument positive? Well, number one, you have to remember that people enjoy what they're good at. Humans almost always will gravitate towards things that they feel that they have a high level skill at, or it's something that perhaps elevates them above other kids or the rest of the herd. It's the things that make them feel good about themselves. It gives them a sense of pride and achievement. Humans will gravitate towards that, and they'll do it more. When they do it more, they get good at it. When they get even better at it, then they do it more. They do it more, they achieve higher skill, and it's just a circle. It's just a snowball effect. So you want to have the kids develop a skill level as soon as possible where they're able to play recognizable music, because that will give them a sense of joy and accomplishment. Other ways in which they can experience a sense of joy and accomplishment from what they're doing is to participate in recitals, auditions, competitions. These are all things that you have to prepare for, and then while you're doing them, like a recital competition, something like that, now you have a sense of nervousness and foreboding, because humans fear failure just instinctively. But after they're done, they feel great. They feel euphoric. They have a sense of achievement and pride and accomplishment. And the kids start associating all of these positive characteristics with their instrument sooner or later. And that makes them want to practice more. It raises their skill. And then there you go again. More skill, more practice, more skill. And it's a snowball effect. The second way in which you can instill as much positivity as possible is to get them to play with other kids as soon as possible. It could be a duet, it could be a quartet, it could be a small ensemble, it could be a full-blown orchestra. It could be just playing with you if you're a parent and you are a musician. But you want them to make music with other kids for a couple of reasons. Number one is that they'll start developing friendships. Friendships are positive. They have fun, they can relax, they can share stories. All of these positive things that happen with kids, they start to associate with the instrument. The other one is you're making music. Making music is one of the great joys of life, and the thrill that any human receives from creating music is hard to explain. But there's a lot of people who will never experience the sheer joy and exuberance of playing on a stage, playing a great piece with other people, and then standing up and then having an entire audience, applause for you. It feels great. It feels wonderful. As soon as you can put them in a position where they're able to play in groups and experience all of this joy and all of this pride, they're going to associate that all with their instrument. As soon as you can do that, then they become self-motivated because they want to experience that more and more. So guys, that brings me to the last part of the video, which is practicing. Practicing to a lot of parents can seem like an insurmountable object. They just can't get their kids to practice, or it just involves so much pain, yelling and screaming and sorrow that they can't commit themselves to having their kids practice all the time. Well, practice can be solved with one word: routine. If you start out for your kids when they're very young, 4 to 7 years old, you just establish a routine. Every day they do many, many things. Practicing is just one of those things. The biggest mistake that parents can make is to create the situation in which their instrument or practice is this giant dragon that they have to slay every day. The kids have all of these things that they do on a day-to-day basis, and then the practicing in the instrument is this extra thing that they have to do. That's just not the way that you want to frame it. The kids brush their teeth, they practice. They come down for dinner or breakfast, they practice. They go walk the dog, they practice. The thing is that human nature is working on our side. Kids tend to like routine. People like routine. Human beings are habitual. If you give them an activity, either good or bad, and they repeat it enough times, they'll tend to develop a habit of doing and repeating that activity. So as long as practice is established very early as a habitual thing that they do, it's just part of their normal routine, then it really isn't a huge dragon that they have to slay. Yeah, it can be difficult to get your kids to brush their teeth or maybe wash their hands when they come in from playing, but they'll do it. It's not a huge deal. And what I always told my kids was, you don't have to practice 7 days a week if you don't want to. You can practice 5 days a week. Just don't miss 2 days in a row. So let's say there's a day where they really, really don't want to practice. Okay, well, let's talk about it, Maybe they had a busy day. Maybe they have a very legitimate reason for not wanting to practice. Maybe they've got finals they have to practice for. Maybe they're really tired. Maybe they had a big school trip that they just got back from. There's a lot of legitimate reasons not to put in a big old practice session. So you just talk with them. Okay, well, don't practice today. Why don't you just practice a bit more tomorrow to make up for it? Okay. Or, well, you actually still do have quite a bit of time today to practice. I'll tell you what, why don't you just do your warm-ups? Don't worry about the hard stuff, the concertos and sonatas and all that. Why don't you just practice your scales and arpeggios and whatnot? Okay. And then you can put a little bit more in tomorrow. Oh, okay. Chances are, if they go upstairs or wherever they go in their room and they warm up with their instrument, their body is warmed up, their mind is warmed up, and now you've put them in the zone. More than likely, I'd say 85–90% of the time, they're not going to just play their scales and arpeggios. Once they get all warmed up, they're probably going to start practicing their orchestra music, or maybe just a tune that they really enjoy, or something like that. But the point is that they didn't miss practice, they didn't miss the routine, they're habitually doing the same thing, because really that's the key to practice, is correct practice, on a very consistent basis. And that, over time, accumulates, and that's how you develop the skill. So in the end, if you're able to make practicing a routine and keep it positive, then you won't just have a child that plays a musical instrument. What you will end up with is a true musician. So guys, I hope I've answered some questions. There's certainly a lot more that I would have liked to talk about, but I'm trying to make the video as short as possible, believe it or not. So if you have any other questions or comments, just put them below the video. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and that alert bell so you'll receive a notification when I create a new video. And don't forget, here at Kennedy Violins, we're all players and teachers, so we're always happy to answer any kind of questions you have anytime. Thanks.